Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the Music Career Show. So today, my guest is one that many of you will be familiar with, even if you're not aware that you're familiar with him. If you're a self-taught musician like me, then chances are you have had lessons from this guy in one way or another over the years. He was teaching guitar online before it was even online, through the likes of Lick Library's DVDs, and even appeared in the very first ever Lick Library DVD. He's now branching out into the Six String Alliance Academy. We're going to talk about that today. He's endorsed by some of the biggest names in the music industry, including Music Man, Mesa Boogie, and DiMarzio. And if that wasn't enough, he's rubbed shoulders with everybody and their dog and was Brian May's guitarist. This is just scraping the surface of what this guy has achieved in his immense career. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Jamie Humphries. Jamie, thanks a million for talking to me today. It's an absolute pleasure.
Good morning. No, it's good afternoon. It's good afternoon for both of us, actually. So good afternoon, Barry. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Yeah, pleasure to have you. As I say, it's morning somewhere. This podcast usually goes out at 7:30 in the morning on a Friday morning UK time. So it's good morning if you're listening to it as it comes out. So Jamie, before we get into all the rubbing shoulders with rock stars and all that kind of jazz, why don't we just take it all back for a second? And where did music all start for you? How did you get into music?
My dad was the reason. As you know, we spoke a few months ago. I sadly lost my dad at Christmas, but my dad was my biggest hero when it came to music, and I had a rock dad. It was Led Zeppelin, it was Santana, it was the Eagles, it was Queen, and my dad made a couple of records. Nothing, of any kind of anything big. But he made a couple of records with his skiffle band in the 50s.
Cool.
It would have been the late 50s, I guess. And to me, that was quite amazing to have like these big, thick, the old school. I think they're like lead based or something. And my phone starts ringing. There we go, a bit of R2D2. These big kind of thick lead style old school records. And to me, it was amazing that my dad had made these records, and there were pictures of him playing guitar, and we always had a guitar hanging in the living room. And I guess it was Queen was the first. Well, it was Santana, and I'm so sorry.
You're okay. You can answer that if you need.
I'm gonna. It's my 2 seconds. We'll have to. Yeah.
No, you're grand. You're grand.
Yeah, I'm sorry. She keeps phoning. It's my other half. I'm in a podcast, love. Are you? I'm in a podcast.
Hello.
Yeah. It's not live. It's pre-recorded. But can we talk in a while? What's that? I need your German contact. We'll do. Speak to you. We're doing a metal festival in Berlin. It's going to be awesome. All right. I need your German sound guy. All right. I'll talk to you in a bit. Yeah. All right. Bye.
That sounds like a men's crack. I'm going to Berlin with you.
My missus is a tour coordinator for Live Nation.
Amazing.
So she's a tour manager, and we are the rock family.
Yeah, that's amazing. I might leave some of that in because that was class.
So anyway, for those of you, a little bit of an interruption there from my lovely Swedish partner. Getting back to where she kept phoning, it was like, I'm going to have to take it.
100%.
Yeah, you'll have that. I need your German contacts. We're doing a German metal festival. Awesome.
Amazing. Class.
So where were we? Yeah, so it was my dad was the biggest thing was, like I said, big records. There we go. And it was Queen. So we used to go up to my grandmother's. We're originally from London, and we lived in the south of England. And so we used to go up to visit my grandmother on a Sunday, every Sunday. And it was the top 40 would be on. And my mum would get me bathed and ready for bed because we'd have Sunday tea and I'd be in my pajamas. And then they put me in the car and drive back to Kent and I'd be asleep. Yeah. And I have this vivid memory of my grandmother had a chopping board round with a handle. In fact, I saw my grandfather a few years ago, and my gran had died, and he gave me the chopping board, and we have it here in Sweden. It's in our kitchen. I was actually using it last night, not for playing guitar. I was chopping food with it. But I have this old chopping board of my gran's, and Brian May Bohemian Rhapsody would come on, and I used to air guitar to it on this chopping board.
Amazing.
And so I used to go on to my dad about playing the guitar and picking the guitar up. And we had this guitar that I still have, this old acoustic guitar. I'm a bit of a hoarder with stuff like that. And
Hmm.
so I started picking out melodies, and I could work out how to play. I think it was the opening melody to either Europa. I think it was Europa by Santana on
Okay.
one string. I could find the notes, and Dad was like, "That's pretty weird. You're like 6 or something." And obviously, I could just go ding ding. I found the notes, and so I
Yeah.
started to play. And my brother was having guitar lessons at school, and so he showed me some chords, and then eventually I joined like the school guitar group a little bit early, and that was it really. But my dad, he took me to see Santana at the Albert Hall when I was 9 years old, 8 years old, I think. So I used to go to rock concerts with my dad a lot and stuff.
Class.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's where it came from. And then I got my first electric guitar, which was like a K Les Paul copy, which is kind of funny now that I've been doing video on the Gibson app, and my first guitar was a fake.
Yeah.
But uh, I had that, and then my granddad bought me a Yamaha SG that I've actually used that in some of my videos recently.
They're amazing.
I snapped the headstock off of that whilst preparing. I did an audition for Ozzy Osbourne in '93, I think. I've got the letter from him, but I was actually
Wow.
I was practicing for this audition to my audition tape, and I was so into my practice that I needed I needed to, I needed a gentleman's sit down. I needed to go to the toilet.
Uh,
And so I moved my amplifier out into the hallway, sat on the toilet, and I was practicing. And then afterwards, when, you have to do the paperwork, I put the guitar down and managed to knock it over and knock the headstock off. So
no way.
the moral of the story, kids, is don't practice Crazy Train whilst you're having a poo, because it will always end in tears. So
That's going to be the name of this episode. Don't play Crazy Train while having a poo.
yeah. So, but the guitar has just been resurrected. Actually, yeah. It's very battle scar, but yeah. So that was it. Really, it was kind of a mixture of it was my dad and stuff really, and then just all my back then I was a kid of the '70s and the '80s, so the evils of being distracted by swiping up
Yeah.
was not a thing, and all I wanted to do was play guitar.
Fantastic. When did was there ever anything else on the cards? Were you ever going to be anything else other than a musician,
Yeah,
or was
I had another really, really safe and secure job in mind, which was to be a comic book illustrator.
great stuff?
you
Fan.
know, absolutely no disregard for anything vaguely academic. I used to bunk my classes and hide behind the school gym to practice guitar, or I'd say to mum and dad, "Don't want to go in today. I want to play guitar."
Well, look, you could have been doing an awful lot worse. You
Yeah,
really could have been doing that. That's how I always think. I was very similar in school. I was actually on a competition for playing guitar when I was younger on in Ireland. It was on RT and all that kind of crack. And the interview was, so I used to go into school every day. Oh, I was great at coming up with excuses for no homework, and I went on the telly. The whole country saw me say, "Oh yeah, no, sure, I don't do homework at all. I just come home and play my guitar." And then all
yeah,
the teachers were like, "Ah, yeah, 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 all that homework that your dog ate. Yeah, yeah, I'd say so." So yeah, but look, you could have been doing an awful lot worse with your time. So you
yes.
finished up school. What was your first job in music then?
Um, well, it's kind of funny because I formed a band with my best friend, my oldest friend, when we were about 7, and he played piano and I played guitar. And his father tragically passed away when he was really young.
Oh,
He's like my other brother, and
yeah,
so obviously losing your dad quite young, his mum tried to make things as nice as possible and really
of course.
encourage the music. And so he had a room at the front of the house that we used to, play Star Wars in, and come up with all these other crazy things like having a newspaper. That was another thing we were going to do. Is to
Yeah,
like, and then we decided one day that we were going to refilm Star Wars, and we built a papier mache set, and there was
Ah,
flour everywhere trying to make it. And
yeah.
his mum used to just put up with so much. But she bought him like a hi-fi, which was one of those kind of, they used to call them MIDI systems. What they had to do with MIDI, I had no idea because there was
Okay.
no MIDI involved. But
Yeah.
had a record deck and it had 2 cassette players and a radio, but
Yeah.
it had 2 mic inputs. And after we got over the initial excitement of being able to record fart tapes, and as you do as an adolescent boy, listen to this one. It was
Yeah.
that was mainly what we did with it. We then discovered that we could. His mum bought him like a Yamaha keyboard,
Uh-huh.
and if you jammed down the A and B rhythm buttons, you could
Okay.
actually get it to play multiple rhythms. We used to do all this shit with it, but we plugged it in and we recorded it onto 1 cassette. We were like, we've recorded the drums.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one of us it was like, well, if we take the drum tape and we put it in the playback tape, and we put another tape in the record, if we play the drums and
Yeah.
record them onto that tape, but plug the guitar in,
There you go.
we can multi-track record. So we were about 10 or 11 and we worked out how to multi-track record on a hi-fi. And so then we started, my guitar sound was, I've got it in the cupboard. I've got an original early 70s Big Muff that my dad got me, which
Class.
is worth an absolute
I
fortune
can
now.
imagine. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was, before, even before a pod or a Axe Effects or whatever, my guitar sound was a DI'd Big Muff. It was
Unreal.
the most horrendous.
Yeah.
But we used to plug that in and record guitar, and so we started making demos. And there used to be like a youth club run by the church. I'm I was not a church guy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there
No.
was like this youth club at the church hall, and we'd sort of gone down there a couple of times. And there was a boy there, and he always used to. They used to, it was a bit of not animosity, but it was all by this other
Rivalry.
group of people. And one day we were in his room and we were playing, and this guy and these other girls walked past, and they were all pointing at the window and laughing at us because we were playing guitar. And we pulled the curtains. Anyway, he got home and obviously thought, that looks pretty cool. So
Uh,
he walked up, knocked on the door, and we were like, what do you want? And he went, I've got a drum kit. And we were like, really? So we went back to his house and there was his kit and he could play a rhythm. We were like, holy shit. And so
yeah.
we were about 12, I guess, and we formed our first band, and we used to put on gigs. And so cut a really long story even longer. There was another band that we got on with, and by the time we were sort of 14 or 15, it was obvious that some of us were going to be more academic than others, and I wasn't one of those. And so we fused the bands together,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden we moved away from trying to be like the next Marillion or Pink Floyd, and my friend had this bit more of a Brian Adams thing, and we kind of merged. The next thing you know, we were like, holy shit, we kind of sounded like Def Leppard meets It Bites with all this kind of. And I got my first Ibanez at 17, and my Steve Vai thing, and we
Yeah.
did a demo, and it was really good. I've got recordings. So drummer Dave, who's sadly passed away now, he played a Simmons kit. So we had that kind of Def Leppard
Yeah.
sound,
Yeah. Cool.
and we did this demo and we started playing theatres and clubs in Kent, and there'd be a queue round the street to come and see us, and we
Brilliant.
attracted quite a lot of attention. And by sort of 1990, we were in discussions with Level 42's manager, and there was a
Wow.
few labels back and forth, and we were talking to Chrysalis, a subsidiary of Chrysalis Records, and we're like, I'm 18, I'm going to be a rock star. I
Yeah.
had my long hair and my 2 Ibanez guitars, and then all of a sudden, Nirvana
Yeah. Came and ruined it for all of us.
fucked it right up. Oh, sorry, I said a naughty word.
Aye.
Ruined it for all of us.
Aye.
So we, all my friends started wearing flannel shirts and not washing their hair and staring at the floor, and I
Being
was like,
depressed.
"Yeah, I'm going to carry on doing." So I met Phil Hilborn, who I'd read his column in Guitarist magazine since I was about 13.
Yeah.
I got his phone number. Someone said, "I've got his number," and I phoned him up, and I started taking lessons. And it was through that he kind of saw something in me, and we became, he's my my daughter's godfather. You know, we toured
Wow.
a lot, and uh, he saw something in me and really took me under his wing. And my mum would be phoning, "Where are you?" And I'm still in my lesson with Phil. You know, a 1 hour lesson would be like 5 hours later. I'll be having dinner, and we'd be putting on all these Shrapnel albums on
Yeah.
vinyl. And I discovered Greg Howe and Jason Becker and all these players in like, you know, the late 80s, early 90s. So it
Yeah.
was a really cool time. And then he was starting up Guitar Techniques magazine with Neville Martin. They were branching off from Guitarist, and I badgered the hell out of him. And then in a lesson one day, I used to work in a yogurt factory and other various shite jobs,
Yeah.
and I convinced. Well, he said to me about you should quit your job, so I convinced my mum and dad. And my dad built me a studio, and I was teaching. And on one day, he just said to me, "Do you want to have a go at doing a transcription for the mag?" Because I was doing a lot of handwritten transcribing and stuff,
Wow.
and that was it. So I started writing for Guitar Techniques magazine in 1994,
1994. Wow.
and I've got a column coming out with them. I think it's the next issue or the issue after. It's yeah, you know, we're 2023 and I'm still writing.
You're nearly 30 years on.
Yeah, which
That's
is
absolutely amazing. So that would have been like your first sort of, I don't need to work in that yogurt factory. I don't need to pull pints. I don't need to do
mm,
this, that, and the other to keep myself going. That was
yeah.
your first kind of real job
Yeah,
as a musician.
I had quite a successful teaching thing. It was because of that time with Nirvana and Green Day and Oasis. It was I was earning decent money sitting in the music room my dad had made me,
Yeah.
and it was a great time. I had a new originals band, plus we did like we were a three piece, and so we were doing a lot of classic rock, and we all sung. So it was like the drummer is now Iggy Pop's drummer,
Right.
which is quite amusing. But
Yeah.
the three of us would sing and play, and we were doing a lot of gigs all the time. We were gigging, so that was fun, and writing for the magazine and teaching. So it was a really inspiring and creative sort of time to be playing guitar.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm a music teacher as well, and I am in my music room. I'll just zoom out. This is basically a fancy shed in my garden, so I teach out
Nice.
here as well. So it's great. But I'd imagine back in the early '90s, when you're talking about the likes of Nirvana and Green Day and Oasis and all that kind of stuff, you're 4 chords maximum in a song. So if people just want to learn all of Nevermind, it's not a huge task for a guitar teacher.
No, I was trying to teach them, you know, Richie Kotzen, and that was when Mother's Head Family Reunion came out, and I was trying to teach them uh, uh, Pride and Glory, the Zach Wild
Yeah.
album, and no, I want to play Green Day. You
Anyway,
know,
here's Wonderwall.
yeah. That song is like it's probably part of my DNA. I taught it so many times back
Oh,
then.
I
I'm phoning up about guitar lessons. Don't tell me Wonderwall. Yeah, okay. And
yeah.
you know, and but it was good. And it was from there that I was teaching guitar in a guitar shop. And this was a weird thing. I was teaching guitar in a guitar shop, and I'd done some stuff for Marshall amps as way back as 1989. I'd done a couple of Marshall road shows,
Oh, cool.
and um, and so I was sort of known a little bit.
Yeah.
And my guitar teacher obviously would introduce me to people at guitar shows, and so I remember going and getting asked to play at this Marshall Road show. So I had this, which I've just found. I was saying about being a hoarder. I had
Yeah.
my original 4-track machine still.
Wow.
Look at that, kids. That's before iPads. That's what you recorded on. And I
Okay.
recorded all my old guitar clinics stuff on this, and I programmed the drums. And then we
Wow.
used to go over to Phil's studio, and we'd output the tracks onto his hard disk machines. This was pre-computer recording, and then we used to
Yeah.
tart them up, put them on ADAT. And I did this Marshall show, and it was really well attended. And you know, Marshall were like, "Oh, we should get you as part of the team." And this guy came up to me, and before that, I used to always go to the guitar shows in London, and I remember when Music Man. I always loved Music Man because of Steve Morse.
Yeah.
I loved the 4 and 2 headstock, and when Eddie started playing the EVH, I was like, oh, I want that guitar. And I
Yeah.
used to go to the guitar shows and sit on the Music Man stand, and they'd literally be prizing the guitar out my hand at the end of the weekend.
Aye.
And then I did this Marshall show several years later, and this guy come up to me and he was like, "You were that long-haired kid?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I work for Music Man." I
Uh-huh.
was like, "Oh." And he said, "And we're looking to sort of really try to raise the profile of the guitars in the UK. And we're looking for a young up and coming guitar player. Would you be interested?" I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So they sent me, it was just after Eddie had gone to Peavey. So they sent me one of the first Axis. I've actually got one of the very early Axis prototypes in my live room, but they sent me this Axis,
Oh
and
no.
I did a
Right.
few bits for them, a few shows and whatnot. So I've actually got one of the first prototypes of the Axis in there, and they gave me this Axis, this Axis guitar, and I did some shows for them, and it was really weird because they then called me and said, "That guitar,
Yeah.
we need it back." I was like, "Oh, okay,
Oh,
we'll give you a call when we got some more demos." At that same time, I'd done one or two transcriptions for Guitar Techniques, and Phil called me up and said, "There's a full-time position at Guitar Techniques. Do you want a monthly column?" And I was
nice.
like, "Yeah." And then I think it was the same week, I had another phone call from what would be Lick Library.
Yeah.
It was called Total Accuracy. And they said, "Oh, we've got your name from Phil Hilborn, and he said you're really good at transcribing. Uh, would you write some guitar books?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure.
Why not?
How do I do that? How do I do that?" And I said yes to it. It was funny because I'd done a few charts. So my girlfriend at the time actually bought me a book called How to Read Music, which I used as like a dictionary. And I wrote my first two books reading that book. To,
Fantastic.
and so I phoned Music Man back and said, "Well, we want to get the guitar." I said, "Okay, I've just got a job working for Guitar Techniques. I've got a monthly column, and I'm also writing the guitar books and CDs for Total Accuracy." And they went,
Yeah.
"Hang on to the guitar." And then about a month later, I got a contract from Music Man, and that was 25 years ago this year.
Amazing. And you've still got that endorsement with Music Man.
Yeah, they built me a one of, I wouldn't say it's a signature model. It's my own version of the Axis they built for me for my 20th year. I spoke to Brian and Sterling, and they were like, "What do you want? What would you like?" And off you go. So I designed this guitar that's the only one of its kind, which is that's it's kind of the main one that I use quite a lot. But yeah, so still with them, still, yeah.
Amazing.
So
Amazing. So for anyone for anybody thinking about like endorsements and that's like that could be one of their career goals. How does an endorsement work? My understanding of it, and I imagine an awful lot of other people that don't have endorsements, that their understanding of it is that you play the instruments and you get them for free. Is that how it works, or how?
not anymore. I don't really know. I think because music has changed so much, and I have to be careful what I say here because I might sound like a bitter old fart when I'm
No,
not,
go for it.
because I based my career on practicing like anything and studying and going to gigs and playing gigs from about the age of 11.
Yeah.
And now it seems that if you if you have enough followers and maybe if you look a certain way, I've seen people who I'm like, "Okay, you're playing guitar, that's great," but they're having stuff thrown at them because they get a lot of views, not necessarily based on the. I'm trying to be really careful, but
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
not necessarily based on the guitar playing skill. Because if that was a middle-aged man playing guitar that way, that you,
You
you'd
wouldn't
be
get
like,
looking.
no, no. So
No.
I think it's very different. I think for me, uh, with my career, I have been fortunate, but I was as a friend of mine, Andy Wood, said to me a couple of years ago, "You were one of the first guys that I ever saw doing this, and we were doing this before the internet."
Yeah.
So, and then Lick Library was the first internet-based company,
Yeah.
and I did all I've done over 400 products for Lick Library. I
Yeah.
did the first DVD, so we were very much, and I even had a TV show on playing guitar on Sky TV. So
Did
it
you?
was, yeah. That was quite embarrassing, but I did do it. But it was, and also you were in the guitar magazines every month.
Yeah.
And working, I was one of the main tutors at the Academy of Contemporary Music for 12 years. So there was a lot of, in terms of now, it's the internet. So if you have a big enough following, and
Yeah.
it's all based on people. A lot, I've got some friends who do some great covers. A buddy of mine, Kafir, he does fantastic videos, and he does his own take on tunes.
Yeah.
But I didn't come from that school of
No.
player. I came from somewhere else,
No.
and I
I know
think
what you mean.
now
Yeah.
it's, I'm at my inbox, even with my pretty small kind of thing that I do. My inbox is full of companies. Would you collaborate with us? And we'll give you this, and you'll do. And I don't even answer it. I'm like, no. I play Music Man because my two heroes played them.
Yeah.
Steve Morse and Eddie Van Halen,
Yep.
and that's
100%.
why I've played a Music Man guitar for longer than my professional career. While I was still a guitar teacher in the back of a shop, I was
Fantastic.
playing a Music Man. I've had various amplifier companies that I've worked with over the years, but penultimately it was always Mesa Boogie. And when I was playing with Henry Rollins, Boogie approached me and said, how would you feel about using our amps? And
Using boogies. Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, yeah. And that grew into me doing a lot of video work for Boogie.
Yeah.
Um, Damasio, I've been with 22 years, I
Class.
think,
Yeah.
21 years. And that came from meeting Steve Blucher at a NAMM show. Steve Blucher was the name I'd always read on all my Shrapnel albums and on Passion and Warfare and on Skyscraper. It was
Yeah.
thanks to Steve Blucher at Damasio. And when he came up to me, I've known Guthrie since '94. We taught at the same school, and we both did a lot of stuff for Cornford in the late '90s, and
Yeah.
we made an EP together,
Right.
which was called the introducing, but I like to call it Jesus versus the Mekon, because Guthrie had all his hair and his beard, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
leaning forward and my head's extended, so that's what it became affectionately referred to as Jesus versus the Mekon. It was the worst album cover you've ever seen, but we did this thing together, and Steve Blucher came up to me and said, I was standing on the Cornford booth, and he was like, "You're the other half of the Guthrie duo, aren't you?" And I
uh,
was like, "Yeah, who are you?" And looked down and saw Steve Blucher, and like, wanted to
Mad.
genuinely at him because it
Yeah.
was Steve Blucher, and so that relationship bore. And so I've had many opportunities to absolutely rinse gear, and I
Yeah.
turned down a lot of it because, yeah, I don't really see it as a career path.
No, no, it's
I,
more of like
I
it
think
sort of creates authority. So if you're associated with the likes of like you're associated with the biggest names in the industry, like DiMarzio,
it's only
Boogie,
because I'm
Music
so
Man, you know what I
old.
mean?
It's
Ah,
just
but
it's because I've been around so long. But I think it's now it's I think if you have I think obviously if you have a successful YouTube channel and you're producing content, I'm fortunate. My YouTube channel I've had since 2008, but I was making someone else's YouTube channel big.
of
So
course, yeah,
I
yeah,
was doing Lick Library, so mine got neglected. And a friend of mine who worked for Wampler and then Two Notes encouraged me to start doing more. And then working with Warren Hewitt from Produce Like a Pro, it's growing. Um, but I'm fortunate where I get brands. I guess it's because of the reputation of what I do with how I present my videos. I get
yeah,
paid, and sometimes I get the gear, but
yeah,
that's not always. And quite often, if I like a piece of kit and someone says to me, "Would you demo my gear?" I'll be like, "Yeah, I think that's cool."
yeah.
So for me, it's not an endorsement deal. For me is a relationship. It's
Relationship, yeah,
like I said, I've known the Ball family for 25 years. I've been to the Ernie Ball factory, and I've done demos for those guys in
yeah,
America.
yeah,
And with Mesa Boogie, they're friends, and for me, it's about tour supporting and and aiding each other in I'm doing this thing, and
Yeah.
and so and as Sterling Ball said to me, I think it was either last year or the year before, we were chatting on the phone. He said to me that even you now are one of the old ones. Look
Wow.
at
Yeah.
look at Steve Morse, look at Luke, look at
Yeah.
they're the next generation, or some of them are two generations on from me, but I'm now starting to get up. So he said, really, your pulling power is not.
Yeah.
People probably look at you and are like, who the hell is this old man, or this middle-aged man? Whereas you'll get some kid who can play. It's more.
Yeah.
People. I think people now look to other people. It's a different time. So
Yeah.
my relationship with Music Man is they still support me so much. I just think it's because of loyalty and friendship. So I've had talks with some other pretty big brands, but
Yeah.
it, it's I could never really. I play other guitars, but it's always a Music Man, really. So
Yeah. Music man's always home.
that's it. That's what I've always done, and I will continue to do so. So I don't really think that I would suggest that an endorsement deal is, uh, if you're doing your channel. I guess I'm probably not the best person to talk to about this, but I guess if you're doing your channel and you're appealing to the eye,
Yeah.
or have something cool going on, or whatever, and you get loads of views, and I guess that's then having support from companies is great, but
Yeah.
someone like me, no one gives a shit. But
Ah,
uh,
well, I do. I certainly do. The first time I came across you, and it was why I said it at the start. There was that an awful lot of people will know who you are, even though they wouldn't necessarily recognize you as Jamie Humphries. Was that I saw those Lick Libraries DVDs in the music shop in Tullamore. Tullamore is a town about 20 minutes away from where I'm from in Ireland, and it was just this big display of like DVDs, and you were on them, and I was like, oh, grand. And then later on, when I started learning, once we had a stable enough internet connection that YouTube videos didn't take 10 minutes to download like
yeah,
a 30-second clip, I was like, ah, that's your man off the DVDs. How has he gotten his DVD onto YouTube? Jesus, that's class. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't really know where I was going with that there, but it was just when you were talking there, it just kind of brought me back to when I was starting and stuff. And you named like Skyscraper. I've got that on vinyl upstairs. Do you know what I mean? I still remember the first time I heard Just Like Paradise. I still remember that because I was like, that's not Eddie Van Halen. And then he was playing the massive big heart guitar. Oh, class. And I still remember having to send away for Passion and Warfare because it wasn't in my
I
local CD
saw
shop and stuff.
I I saw David Lee Roth on the Skyscraper tour.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
me and my friend, we didn't have tickets, and we went up to London, and uh, we got tickets, last minute tickets for that. It was then we got them for Wembley, because I met Steve Vai the first time at the Hammersmith gig, and he signed my wallet, because I
Ah,
was I was
yes.
too I was too poor to buy a concert program, and
Oh,
so he signed my wallet for me. And then we went to see them at Wembley, and we got there really early, and no word of a lie, we walked round the side. It was all open because all the trucks were coming in,
yeah,
and we walked round. It was no one
yeah,
around, and we walked down. I'll never forget walking down the side of Wembley Arena,
yeah.
and all the side doors open, and we walked in, and there was a rack of guitars, and there was all Steve Vai's guitars, and we were like touching the heart guitar.
Are these just up for grabs, or do you know
We
what I
could
mean? Like,
honestly, if I was a little bit Velcro fingered, I could have picked up one. There was no security. There was no one. No one. I'm looking at the tours that I do, like the security and crew everywhere. I dread to think that my gear is left. But
yeah,
yeah, and that is God's honest truth. And then we went to meet them. I had my concert program, and they were being bundled out of a minivan, and Steve Vai, I walked up to him, I gave him my concert program, and he started to sign it for me. And the
uh,
security guard launched at me and tackled me to the
Crikey.
ground. And Steve Vai looked really angry. All the signature got smudged. So I still had it, and I had the ticket stubs put in. And a few years ago, Steve Vai played in Stockholm, and I was talking to Dave Weiner, and he invited me down. And I got to sit in like the box with the fans in the venue. It was like a room upstairs where Steve's wife was, and I was in this bit. And afterwards, I got to meet Steve, and I told him the story. I said, "You won't remember this. Obviously, I was 15, I think."
Yeah, yeah.
And I showed him the concert program, Smudged. And I said, "Would you sign it for me again, please,
No
Steve?" It was
way.
on the 20th anniversary or whatever it was of Passion and Warfare gigs, those ones a few years ago. So he
Yeah.
signed it, and he signed it to Jamie, Steve Vai again. And so I have this skyscraper thing which has got the smudged tackled to the ground by security signature and the new one. But I have the Hammersmith ticket and I have the Wembley ticket, both stapled in there.
That's just so, so cool. That's so cool. Steve Vai seems like the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, I got to play with him at the London Guitar Show in 2009 with it was Phil Hilborn again was doing a thing with he plays in a band a lot with Nico McBrain, and I had the
Yeah,
chance to play with Nico in America. He guested on a tour I was on, and he was Phil's best man, so I've known Nico for years. So I
yeah.
got invited up, and I can't remember what it was. Yeah, this was weird.
Okay.
I played "Run to the Hills"
Yeah, yeah.
with Nico McBrain on drums and Steve Vai on guitar. We were
That's
playing Iron Maiden covers.
That's the most surreal. Run to the Hills was the very, very first Iron Maiden song I ever heard. And to this day, the only Iron Maiden album I've ever owned is Number of the Beast. And I could
Yeah.
probably recite every single song from start to finish on Number of the Beast. One of the very, very few albums that I actually love start to finish. I
Mm.
think it's just pure perfection. That's just insane. That's just, like before myself and Jamie started recording here, we were chatting and catching up and just getting to know each other and stuff. And I said it's like literally having every single documentary I've ever watched on music talk back to me. It's just it's wild hearing these stories. It's amazing. But you said there at the start that you were raised on the likes of Queen and they were one of your very, very first ever influences. I know he eventually went on to become Brian May's guitar player. Now, number one, why does Brian May need a guitar player? And number two, how did that come about?
Uh, well, Brian doesn't really need a guitar player. I think that sometimes Brian becomes a little unsure of himself, and I think in the 90s, he had Jamie Moses, and I'm sure that I only got the job because my name was Jamie, and
It was one less job for an
yeah, it was
admin
like
to
he
do.
didn't have to remember my name. What's your name? Steve, Dave, whatever.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's some quite intricate harmonies. I work a lot with Dave Kilminster from Roger Waters,
Oh yeah. Okay.
and I'm about to mix Dave's third album. It's basically Stephen Wilson's band on the album. So it's like Marco Minimum and Nick Beggs, and I can't remember the keyboard player's name, I'm afraid. But Dave's done a new album, and we've been meant to be mixing it since the pandemic. But Dave was doing the Roger Waters thing. I'd been doing. I was working with a producer, and we'd been doing some stuff for Virgin. So I was doing a lot of like top 20 stuff in sort of 2003, and
Yeah.
it's I still work with that producer because I ended up actually my guitar playing is on a what are they called? There's a K-pop band who are absolutely massive.
BTS.
Yeah, I'm on a BTS single,
That,
which is
that's it. That's going to be the name of the episode. 100%.
yeah. I did a session for them. I had to through this friend of mine. He just called me, this producer I work with. He said, "Oh, I'm working with one of the biggest producers in Korea, and we're working on this BTS." I had no idea what it was,
Yeah.
and so I had to replay the samples basically
Okay. Fair
because
enough.
they pitched them and they'd gone weird, lots of artifacts,
Yeah.
and so also they couldn't because of licensing. So I had to take this piece of guitar that they'd built, which was
All right. Okay.
actually impossible to play. So
Oh
I
really?
and he couldn't play it. It was like this bit, that bit, but I had to and it did come back. No, you've got to get this feel right and that feel right. And I didn't know anything about it, and then James said to me, "You do realise that your guitar playing is on the biggest downloaded um, released single of all time on iTunes. I was like, who's that? So, but anyway, so I was doing that, and I was hanging out with Dave a lot. We were doing a lot of gigs together and stuff when he was doing the Roger Waters stuff, and we were doing a lot of stuff with Richie Kotzen at the time.
Yeah.
And so one morning I got up and I opened my email in my old studio, and I had this email, and it said Neil Murray on it. I was like, Neil Murray? And it said, hello, my name's Neil Murray, bassist for Whitesnake, Black Sabbath, Gary Moore. And I was like, yeah, mate, I know who you are.
Yeah.
And he said, I play bass on the We Will Rock You show in London.
Yeah.
And we need a new guitar player. And every time we put classic rock into YouTube, you appear. Would you be interested in coming up and sitting in? I was like, yeah. So I went upstairs to my studio, make a cup of tea, and Dave texted me and he said, check your email. I said, I have. And he went, what do you think? I said, yeah, Neil Murray. And he was like, what? He said, check your email. So I went back down, checked my email, and then it was, hi, my name's whatever from the Australian Pink Floyd show. And your name has come through Roger Waters' management. Would you be available for an American tour? And I was like, what? So I kind of put the We Will Rock You thing on hold because I went on tour for 4 months in America and Canada.
Yeah.
When I came back, I went in and I sat in on We Will Rock You. And the way that they mission you is that you play to the audience.
Right.
You don't rehearse. So you've got this red special with all these switches and a treble booster, and there's no clean sound. It's all done. You've got your in-ears. You've got a television screen with the MD. I'd never worked with a conductor. And they basically, if you're crap, you get the shepherd's crook. You're off.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it's real trial by fire. So I went up. I remember for the first song, I had no vibrato. I was so nervous.
Oh,
It was like,
God.
meh, why won't my hand move? And I did it, and I got through the show. And the guy I was subbing for was sitting next to me, Alan Darby. And Alan said, he just recently sadly passed away. He used to play with Van Morrison and Eric Clapton and Bonnie Raitt. He played with some big names, and he said to me, right, I'm booking you for next week. You're on your own, sort of thing. I was like, shit.
Yeah.
So you come up the next time you play it, it's just, you and I was Laurie Wisefield from Wishbone Ash and Tina Turner's band. So it's all these pros, and then I'm sitting there, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And so I kind of became one of the main subs for Chair One and We Will Rock You.
Okay.
Unbeknown to me, the singer who was Swedish and who played Galileo and Jenna who played Scaramouche, they were all like, he's a stayer, he'll do well. Anyway, me and Phil was doing it as well on the other chair, and we went out and did this tour in America that I told you about was a bit crap, and actually went under. And we both came back a little bit scarred. And Peter had left We Will Rock You and come back to Sweden. And so he was doing his own show called Champions of Rock. And it was a little theatre production. And he said, would you guys come out and play guitar? So it was with Neil Murray again. So we all came out, and one gig turned into two gigs turned into three, which turned into a live album. We sold this pretty big theatre out.
Yeah.
And so next thing it was, we're doing a tour. So I came back to Sweden, and there was a female singer named Kerry Ellis on there. And Kerry had worked with Meatloaf. Was it Meatloaf or Britney Spears? It's a different name depending on which country you do it on. But she was in We Will Rock You.
Yeah.
And so we were hanging out, and she was like, "You really sound like Brian." I was like, "Oh,
thanks."
Just hear stuff, and I guess over the years of doing the guitar magazines and the Beat Library, you analyze and you exaggerate the thing that you think makes that player sound away. And for me, Brian May, there's a very majestic kind of phrasing to his playing, which you try to emulate. So, she sort of said that, and I didn't think anything of it. We finished the tour, and one evening I was driving back from the ACM, or should I say I was sitting in traffic jam on the M25, and my phone went. Kerry phoned, and she was, all right, Kerry, what are you doing on September I can't remember the day. I was like, I don't know. I said, why? She said, do you want to do a gig? I said, yeah, sure. Yeah, what is it? She said, it's with Brian May in Hyde Park. And I was like, what? And she said, yeah, you've been put forward for this new band with Brian May. I was like, are you
Jesus.
shitting me? So anyway, I'd got asked to do this feature for the Guitar magazine where they came and photographed my studio because I've got quite a big guitar collection, and they
Yeah, yeah.
wanted to do a thing, and so they were photographing it, and my phone kept ringing while the guy was there. My mobile, then my home number, and I picked it up, and this lady just said, "Oh, hello, my name's Sarah from Duck Productions. I work for Brian May," and I was about to go, "Yeah, whatever," and as the guy was sitting there, and I was like, "Oh yeah, yes, really." And she said, "Yeah, we believe that you're in for a full week of We Will Rock You next week." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she
Yeah.
said, "Brian will be coming to watch you play."
Jesus
And I put
Christ.
the phone down. I said to the guy, I was like, "Holy shit!" So anyway, I turned up on one particular day, and they said, "Jamie." Bright, well, they said on the MD said over the mic to everyone, right, best behavior, the boss is in. And I was like, oh no. And everyone, Neil was looking at me, good luck. And the MD Stuart just said, Jamie, just relax
Yeah.
and just play. And I was like, relax. And I remember sitting in the box on the bandstand, because you're at the sides, and
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
over into the box and just seeing the silhouette of hair. I'm thinking, that's my Guitar Hero as a kid, and he's watching me play. And so I played the first act,
Yeah.
and everyone was like, nice. You
Yeah.
not what it was, no fuck ups, all done. And so Stuart said over the thing, can everybody please leave the bandstand and go to the band room? And Jamie, will you stay there? And
No
so I
way.
sat there on my own, and then I heard him, where's Jamie? And up he came. And I was like, it's fucking bright. Oh, I've sworn again, sorry. There you have to beep.
Say whatever
It's,
the fuck you want is all good.
there's that's Brian May. And he said to me, this was the funny thing. He said to me, what guitar is that you're playing? Obviously meaning what version. And I went, well, it's one of yours, Brian. And I don't know whether that's like humor broke the ice, but he was like, I know that, but oh yeah, and we just hit it off. And he was a Star Wars fan, and
Amazing.
so it was a couple of weeks later, I got a call, and he invited me to his house. So I went around his house, and I've still got the recordings on my phone of us rehearsing together. We're learning the songs, and then he took me upstairs, and we were pulling all these guitars out. I had the 80s Guild and stuff that you
Yeah.
see on the Live Magic video. And I used to go into the Queen vault, and he'd hand me Freddie's handwritten lyrics and stuff.
Stop.
But yeah, so the first gig I did was the proms at Hyde Park with I think it's the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And it was like, I don't know, like 80,000 people. And it was broadcast on the BBC. It was like a couple of million viewers. And you're like, it's my first gig. Do you know what I mean? Don't fuck it up, mate.
Yeah.
It was quite an undertaking. And there's a funny video on YouTube, and if you find it, it's a Brian May Proms 2010,
Uh-huh.
and there's a couple of versions, but there's the long version, and Terry Wogan introduces us all. And so Terry Wogan's going, oh, we've got this band of debauched, rock and roll people, and making his usually Terry Wogan jokes. And he goes through everyone. Neil Fairclough, who's now the bassist for Queen, Rufus Taylor, Roger Taylor's son,
Yeah, yeah.
and then he goes, and on guitar, we have James Humphries. And he calls
Uh-huh.
me James. So all the backing singers are going, James, just taking the piss out of me.
Yeah.
And at that, I turn round and I look at him and I go, fucking James, like that. At the moment that the BBC cameras,
I'm taking a note of that.
you
I'm
watch
gonna
it,
look for it.
you see me go like this. And it's yeah, my mum and dad were like, only you would do that, It
There's
was
there's another great name for the episode. I swore at Terry Wogan.
I swore live in front of several million people on BBC. Sorry, I'm sitting on my in-ear cable. Yeah, so it kind of went on from there, and then we did a tour, and then I turned 40, and so I was meant to have a 40th birthday party, and we were on tour, and Kerry said, "Oh, are you having a birthday party?" And I was like, "Yeah. Gonna have something." And Brian went, "You having a 40th birthday party?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." He went, "Can I come?" And
No, Brian.
I was like, "Well, well, of course, Brian. I said, I just didn't think you'd want to come to my birthday. And I never forget this. He said, yeah, what are you going to do? I said, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll play some music. My brothers. He said, yeah, I won't play Queen songs, though. We can play Beatles songs. So I was like, all right, you're on. So I told my brother, because he'd organised like his squash club or something.
Yeah.
And I said, look, Brian May's going to
Wild.
probably come. So I said, yeah, we have to just sort of, we can't have the people who own the squash club phoning up the new local papers going, Brian May is here. I said, because it will really,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's my friend. And my
Yeah.
brother was like, absolutely. And I had to kind of say to my mates, look, Brian May is coming,
Yeah.
and
Be cool.
you can't be going,
Yeah.
because he's outside of that, he's a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and this makes me sound like a real dick but it's true.
No.
So,
No. No.
so anyway, I got an email and it said, we've had a gig come in, but sadly it's the weekend of your birthday. So Brian won't be able to attend your birthday.
Ah.
And so I was like, okay. And they said, we understand that it's your birthday. So if you want, we'll put another guitar player in. And I was like, no, I ain't letting anyone else near that gig.
Yeah.
So I
Sure
said,
enough.
no, I'll cancel my birthday party. It's fine. So we cancelled it. And I went out with my mum and dad the night before. And, but that day, it was a Friday night we went out, but the gig was on the Saturday. And no, it was on the Sunday. It was the Goodwood Festival of Speed, where we have all the racing drivers,
Right.
and we were on the back of a truck. But so on the Friday, the 1st of July, my birthday, I went up to Brian's for rehearsals. And so I turned up there and there was no one around. So I walked around the back of the house, looking around, went to go in, and it was like, surprise. And
No
Brian had
way.
laid on this party for me at his house.
Ah.
And he's a big Star Wars fan, and I am. So on tour, he had this Nintendo 3DS with Lego Star Wars, and I was always pinching it off him. So he bought me my own one for my birthday. It was one of my most, Brian May bought this for my birthday. So we were all eating, and he was like, right, we better get on, do some rehearsing. He said, let's go and make a cup of tea. He said, Jamie, come and make the tea. And so I went into the kitchen with him, and he went, how would you feel about playing a gig with Queen? And I was like, all right. So I got to do one gig with Queen, which was
just madness.
It is when you tell it when I say it, you kind of sound like, you're dropping names. I once stood next to someone in the toilet, but it really was a time where you're like, is this real? There was a load of other stuff going on at that time as well with Queen. There was meant to be more gigs, but then from there, after I finished with them and he went back to one guitar, he gave me We Will Rock You Europe. So I did that. I did that for about 4 years.
That's unbelievable. That would have been when Paul Rogers was singing for Queen.
No, it was just before Adam Lambert. So we had it was a mixture of different singers. We had different bass players. Neil Fairclough was on bass. Yeah. Still, that was kind of when he joined, but it was also Mike Rutherford from Genesis was on bass. And Tom Chaplin from the band Keane sang with us.
Right.
And who else? There was Patty Russo sung with Meatloaf. Roger Taylor sung quite a bit. So Rufus would play drums. Matt Lucas.
Why?
I don't know. He was there. I guess it was because there was the whole thing about Freddie being gay and, being a celebrity, being one of those kind of gay, the first kind of gay icon. And there was a whole thing with Matt talking about, accepting his sexuality. And so he was there. And it was funny because we always had that whole sort of, all the time. All we ever said was, and it's gone on for years. And we always used to say it, even Brian's talking, Brian would always, And I remember it was like a Tourette's. And I'm in rehearsals and Matt Lucas walks in. I'm like, oh my God, there he is.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to talk to him. I just want to hug him and go, And I'm looking at him. And you can see Brian looking at me going, don't. And then all the whole band. And Matt Lucas walks up to me and he said, we had to rehearse his song and there was a few changes. And after he said, I'm so sorry for all the messing around. I said, it's all right, Matt. I said, don't worry, that's what we're here for. I said, I have to say, I said, I bloody love you.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I said, and I have a Tourette's. And he went, go on. I went, yeah, no. And he went, yeah, no. And we had this whole thing. And then we're all just saying it. And he sent me a message on Twitter. He was like, so lovely to hang out and meet you. Yeah, no. But it was fun. There was a lot of people there. But it was funny from that. I think I'm the only guitar player to have played We Will Rock You Too.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic.
There was
What's We Will Rock You Too now? Forgive my ignorance if I don't know what that is.
there was another We Will Rock You that never came out. And Brian asked me
Oh.
to, I workshopped the show with Brian and I did all of the parts, went through, and I spent a week in the studio with Brian
Yeah.
analyzing his guitar parts and going, oh, what did you play there, Brian? And, it was just such a phenomenal time to be able to work with him on that level. And we were in London rehearsing for this because it was like a one-off show with like all of Brian's celebrity friends there.
Yeah.
That's Stephen Burkoff. You were in like James Bond movies. Oh my God, it was like all
Yeah.
these Emma Thompson in the front row, and it was just invite only. But we were rehearsing, and after a while, you just sort of you're aware that it's Brian May, and I was always excited to go and work with him.
Yeah.
But because it was such a rush. But when you're with him, it was just you can't be like, you're just doing your job, and
Yeah.
you become comfortable. And so I remember he was like, "Oh, should we go out and have lunch?" And so it was me and the other guys in the band. We're just walking along. We're walking down the road, and you're kind of aware of people going, and you're just. We walked out. We
Yeah.
walked into this cafe near where we were rehearsing. And we're chatting away, and Brian's like, what's everyone want? And we're ordering, oh, have a cup of tea, Brian, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember thinking, this cafe is quiet. And looking around, and the whole of this cafe, everyone was like, complete silence.
Yeah.
It was a fun time, and we're still in contact and stuff.
That's absolutely my jaw is hurting from smiling and from like my jaw
Oh
dropping
man,
from all of that.
every time they play, I get an email from them. Would you come? And the other, would you like to come to the show? I get invited.
Yeah.
But the other thing was that I introduced Brian to IK Multimedia
Wow.
because they were looking for an in. So I went the back route and went to Pete Malandroni's tech. And then when they developed Amplitude Brian May, they came to me and said, well, we're sending it to Brian. We're going to the studio. Would you make some sounds? So I did some tones and they took it and Brian was playing and they filmed him and sent it to me. And Brian was like, who made these sounds? They were like, Jamie. He went, yeah. Okay, get him to program it. So I was responsible for programming all the presets for Brian May Amplitude. And I'd be working on the sounds. I'd be like, okay, Brian, I'm on this sound, blah, 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 blah. And I've got these emails from him where he's talking about, he wouldn't just talk about how he made the sound. He'd talk about the whole sort of, oh, Freddie came up with this and we'd be doing that. And, it's just, there's little things that I will never forget. Like going around Brian's house and sitting down at a piano.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's Freddie's piano. That was the one at Live Aid and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, or just, being with him and being handed the John Birch playing his Red Special, of course.
Yeah,
but having the John Birch one that you see in all the We Will Rock You video, all this rare stuff.
Yeah.
Like when they did It's a Hard Life, that video, and Brian's playing that guitar that's like a skull.
Right. Yeah.
And being handed that and seeing all the News of the World robots. And it was like, it was amazing. It was a phenomenal sort of experience to have had.
Yeah, it's like seeing these things that were like it's like holding the Holy Grail in your hand. That's like it's something that's so mythical and just out of this world, and actually seeing it in it's like that's Freddie's piano from
seeing
Live Aid.
Seeing it through your own eyes, because growing up in the 70s and the 80s and buying the Live Magic vinyl and seeing Brian in the Guild advert and then holding that guitar. And seeing Bohemian Rhapsody video and playing the guitar through his setup and having the lyrics to It's a Hard Life, the sheet, Brian going, I got invited to there's a book called 40 Years of Queen, which is a wonderful book, really beautiful coffee table book. And I was
Yeah.
invited to the book launch. I was Brian's guest,
Yeah.
and I went to that, and I've got the book signed to me from Brian, and I've got the invitation with the red special. I've got like all this stuff, and sitting with Brian, and just being at these events that you can't comprehend how did I end up here?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, having a wee
It's-
in Brian's toilet. You know, going around his.
yeah.
I'm in Brian May's loo. You know, it's just weird. And you know, I don't think you ever kind of it didn't feel real.
Yeah.
You know.
That's I'm actually speechless having heard all that. At the moment, and I'm going to do a very very quick shout out to one of my students, Harry. Harry is 11 and he's the biggest Queen fan in the world. And he comes in every week or every second week, and he's now started playing with a coin.
Yep.
And he's fantastic. So how are you, Harry?
I've got a whole thing of sixpences in there that I
Have you?
use. Yeah, I
Yeah.
always play with the sixpence.
He comes in and he says, "Oh, can you teach me this song?" And I'd be like, "Right, okay, it's a song I've not heard, so let's have a look at it." Yeah, it goes like this, and he's like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Okay, grand." So when you say it teaches, he just wants to talk, and he wants to talk about the intricacies, like you're saying, the majestic way that Brian phrases things. So I'm
Mm.
going to send how are you, Harry? I'm going to send this on to Harry, and he's going to listen to this, and he is not going to. He's going to be absolutely beside himself.
But
Um,
it was on one of those gigs. I have to just tell you this other weird phenomena,
yeah,
if you're interested, which was
absolutely.
when I did the gig with Queen. We got there was this whole kind of process of like, you okay, now this is going to be different, Jamie. It's not my band. This is Queen. It's this, and this, and you know, I hope that you feel comfortable. He really looked after us because you're now a session musician playing in the biggest band in the world.
Yeah,
And we were playing a gig that was to celebrate Freddie Mercury's 65th birthday. In
lovely.
fact, there was a picture, Neil Murray brought it to me last week. It was a copy of this issue of Classic Rock magazine where Jeff Beck's on the cover.
Okay, cool.
And there's a picture of Jeff Beck and Brian May at the Freddie Mercury tribute gig, and you can see all the Black Star amps next to him, which were mine, and you can see my arm. And
Ah,
I obviously went, Brian May, Jeff Beck, bald bloke. Let's cut him out. And so my arm is in Classic Rock magazine this month next to Brian and Jeff. But when I did the gig, quite often they would hire me Steve Pryor as my guitar tech, and Steve
okay,
Pryor was Jeff Beck's long-term guitar tech.
right, okay,
So I turned up to rehearsals, and Steve was there, and he was doing my gear, um, and I remember his workbench had this massive Freddie Mercury flag on it. It was the way, even the preparation was amazing. And he
yeah,
said, "You know who's in this afternoon, don't you? One of the guests." I said, "I don't know all the guests." He said, "Jeff Beck." I was like, "Oh my God."
yeah,
So anyway, Jeff Beck comes in, and he's standing next to me, and we're playing, and I'm very aware I've got Brian May and Jeff Beck, and I was there, and know your place.
yeah,
This is now you're playing with two of the greats.
yeah,
So just
100%.
do your thing, just knuckle down. And so I did my job, and I went home that night. Dad, I just played with Jeff Beck, because my dad bought There and Back in the 80s, and
Right,
we used to listen to that record together. So it's always, he introduced me to his music. So I went up to the gig day, and Jeff kind of loosened up a bit. And
uh-huh,
at the time, I had a Jeff Beck strap, which I don't know why I stupidly sold it. And we were hanging out, and we were chatting, and so it was we'd all had food, and there was this big party, and we were about to go on, and I go into the green room, and Jeff Beck is warming up,
uh,
and I saw Jeff, and I sort of said, "Hey, so hello, mate." I was like, "Oh," I said, "Oh, I won't get in your way, Jeff." And he said, "No, come and sit with me. I could
uh,
do with the company." So I sat down. He had a little Vox Valvetronic, and he said, "What
yeah,
would you like me to play?" And I said, "Where were you?" And he did the whole thing with the harmonics for
right,
me, sitting. And I'm like, "You can't make this up, you
yeah,
know." And we did the gig and Jeff came on and they were doing Tie Your Mother Down, and that was the best A, G, D chord I've ever played in my life.
I can imagine.
But as we were playing it, Jeff kept turning off my booster. And I'm
Right.
like, Jeff Beck's turned off my booster. Is there something wrong? So I gingerly pressed it with my foot again, got my sound back. Jeff Beck turned it off. And I'm like, Jeff Beck's turned off my booster. Holy shit. I'm on stage. My sound now sounds really thin.
Yeah.
So I was like, I turned my booster on. And he moved his foot, hovered over my board, looked at me, and I thought, he's going to tell me off. He rolled his eyes and laughed and then turned his own booster off.
That's I don't even know what to say to that. That's mad.
That was very weird. That was really weird. So
you should have went and turned his stuff off.
Yeah. The thing was, I was using like an exotic EP booster, which is so wide, and he had like a clon. I'm like, how the hell do you get them muddled up?
That is, yeah, Jesus Christ. But then I suppose he was just kind of focused on what he was
doing. Yeah.
Wow, that's yeah. Like I said, I'm completely speechless. I don't even know what to say to that. That was amazing, and thanks so much for sharing all that stuff. That's
it's always fun to tell it. It's sometimes I've done a couple of these kind of things, but I don't like to do them because I don't, and this is coming from the heart. It's fun to talk about it, and it's fun to see people's reaction because you know how special people like these are to people. Oh man, you did that. You know, but it's sometimes hard because you don't want to be seen as, you know, dining out on something that you did 10 years ago and you're still trying to find to be relevant by talking about it. It was one thing I was never allowed to talk about, which I have spoken about on one other podcast that I did, which was at the time I was sworn to absolute secrecy. I had to sign a thing, but no, I don't think it really matters now.
Cool.
Have you seen that company Masterclass?
Can't say I have.
So they'll like Steve Martin will teach you comedy.
Oh, okay.
Or some famous tennis player, or Gordon Ramsay will teach you cooking.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, Carlos Santana teaches you guitar.
Yeah.
So I got an email about in 2016, 2017, and this guy, he said, I represent this company called Masterclass. We'd like to talk to you about a project, but we need you to sign an NDA before we can have the conversation.
Okay.
So I was like, all right. So I signed the NDA, I wrote Eddie Van Halen's guitar course.
Really?
Eddie Van Halen was going to do a course for Masterclass, and it never happened. I'm guessing it's because he was ill. But I've still got it. I wrote, because they came to me with these questions that they were going to ask him. And I was like, you can't ask some of these things. Do you think, I think things like, if you get a guitar, do you kind of think it's cool if you smash it up? And I'm like, why would you ask Eddie Van Halen that? I said, these are like things that I just wouldn't. I said, he's not smashing them up. Some things are big. He's and how do you feel about alcohol and drugs? I'm like, why would you ask him this when he had some problems?
Yeah.
I said, people don't want to know this. People want to know about how did you come up with that solo on Drop Dead Legs? How did you do? I said, that's what people want to know. So they
how do you stretch your hand so far on Ice Cream Man?
Yeah. So they said, okay, write it. So I used the skeleton of their course, and I wrote a course, and it went off to Eddie, and it got approved. And I was like, oh my God. And they had two dates or 3 dates, and each one he had to pull out. And I don't know whether it was because of his illness. And then they never managed to reschedule it with him. But then they wrote to me again, and they said, because of Eddie can't commit, we've now gone with Tom Morello.
Right.
So would you oversee the Tom Morello guitar course? So they sent me the course, and the bloody cheeky sods have basically rewritten my Van Halen course. I was like,
no way.
Really? They paid me. Again, they did pay me saying that, but I just sort of, but I'd always, when that happens, because I'd seen that they had Carlos Santana, and I'd seen like I don't know if there was someone else they did drums with, and because they come to me and said about guitar, they said that Eddie Van Halen had to pull out, and they said, "Who would you suggest?" And I said, "Steve Morse." I
Yeah.
said, "You should get someone who's a real player." But they, I went with Tom Morello. Obviously, he's a big name, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
really say that he was,
Not
you know,
comparable anyway.
no, it's kind of he's a very unique guitarist. He's
Very, very
fantastic.
unique.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I wrote this course. It's still on my computer. It was, and I was really praying that when we're filming, can I come? Can I watch it being
Ah,
filmed?
wow.
Yeah,
Well, there you go.
that,
That's like what, the third near miss with Eddie?
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So that was cool. But yeah, it's a shame. Not many people know. I've spoken about it on something else. So obviously I
Yeah.
wasn't allowed at the time, but I think since Eddie's passed, it's like
Yeah, it's a bit, yeah. Well, thanks a million for sharing that. Eddie is my absolute. When I grow up, I want to be Eddie Van Halen. I'll never be Eddie Van Halen, but he's my absolute idol. Like literally every say, like people that listen to this podcast know that I'm completely upset. I'm wearing a Van Halen t-shirt.
good,
There we go.
good man.
Yeah, Van Halen are like everything I have, like my phone, my notepad that I spent £16 on Redbubble. £16 for that. So I
Nice.
did absolutely everything I have at the mouse mat and everything. So that's Jesus, that has absolutely blown my mind. I don't know what to do with that information. I really feel like I need to go and like run that off or something. I don't know, but
Yeah, it
Jesus,
was it was
that's
it, it was a rush sort of writing it,
yeah.
and I don't know whether he read it, but it went to his people and it got the green light. That's all I
I
know.
would
And
knowing what I know about Eddie and how kind of precise and anal he was about absolutely everything that he touched. You'd surely he would have signed off and he wouldn't have put his
yeah,
name
I
to it otherwise.
I, I would have thought so, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
a. I have the Word document with all of it written out.
that's
Yeah,
wow,
and
wow.
I got paid, and they paid me a pretty good fee.
Yeah,
I got paid to work for them. I did it for about 3 weeks, I guess.
yeah.
I got paid to listen to Van Halen. you know, I'm going to
Right.
listen to every Van Halen album and do some research. Oh, okay. How
Oh,
many hours did I do today?
wow.
Send it in.
Yeah,
I listened to Van Halen for 6 hours today.
that's
Yeah, it's pretty.
I have every single Van Halen album on vinyl, on tape, on CD. Oh,
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah,
Christ. I don't know what to do with that. I really don't know what to do with that information at all. So, Jesus, right. I tell you what, let's try and come fucking hell. Let's try and come back down to earth just a little bit. And so let's come back down to earth and speak about the stuff that you're working on now. So you've got the 6 string alliance
yeah.
on the go. What's the crack with that? Talk to us
Well,
about that.
basically, I got asked by Andy Ferris to do something similar to this. Andy had been reading my stuff in guitar magazines for years, and he was like, we connected on Facebook, and he was like, I'd
Yeah.
love to get you on my channel. So I went on Andy's channel. Me and Andy really hit it off, and we've since become very good friends. We've hung out quite a lot
Yeah.
and we've done some events together. Um, and I did this long chat with Andy about, playing guitar and making a living, how I managed to achieve it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Warren Hewitt from Produce Like a Pro. Warren is a very renowned mix engineer, producer. He's worked with Ace Frehley, Aerosmith, Paul Gilbert, Jared James Nichols. The list, I think Korn as well. He's done a lot of movie soundtracks, um, and Warren's community, Produce Like a Pro, is massive. So
Yeah.
he kind of came to me and said, "Look, I've just watched your interview." Or he said to me, "I'd really like to meet this guy." So we hooked up a meeting, and we ended up kind of starting a company together.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to do a guitar academy with me, which is what we're working on. So we had some meetings, and Glenn Fricker was involved. Glenn Fricker's got quite a big channel, well, very big channel as well.
Yeah.
Glenn,
Oh yeah,
blows the
Spectre Sound.
yeah, Glenn
Yeah,
blows
I
things
know.
up, and
Yeah.
Glenn has been really helpful to me. Warren organised a bunch of new cameras for me, and I did some filming, and Glenn wrote to me and was like, "Dude, what the fuck have you done?
Sounds
You're
him, all right.
you look grey." And I was like, "I know. What am I doing wrong?" And so he helped me set up my cameras and was like, "Go and buy a grey card." I said, "I look grey enough, Glenn. No, go and
Yeah,
get and put that in front of the camera. Set your white balance from the. I'm watching YouTube. You know, did it, shot some video, and went, oh my god, look
yeah.
at my
I,
video." And that's
I got my video tips from him as well.
yeah. So that's why my videos on my YouTube channel look like that,
Fantastic.
because of Glenn.
Yeah,
But me, Warren, and Glenn were sitting around one night having a meeting, and we were trying to come up with names. And there was all these different guitar, this and this. And Glenn said six string. I
yeah,
went six string. I said, I like that. And
yeah.
then it came to me. It popped into my head.
Uh huh.
And I thought, what else do I love as much as I love guitar? I love
Yeah,
Star Wars. And I thought of
the Rebel
it.
Alliance.
Exactly. So I said Six String Alliance, and we all just went, "That's it." And Glenn
Fantastic.
went, Glenn went, "Hi, my name's Jamie Humphries, and welcome to Six String Alliance." He went, "It's perfect." So we registered it, and we rebranded my YouTube channel. The thing is Six String Alliance kind of gives the title of us having more than one of us, and it's actually, well, no, there is more than one, but we've had a couple of guests do some stuff on the channel. Um, a friend of mine, Pete Callard, who's a phenomenal jazz guitarist, he's done some content.
Yeah,
Eventually, there will be more guys. There's a couple of other quite big YouTube names that Warren's been talking to who have agreed to do stuff with us. And there's there's a student of mine, or an ex-student of mine, should I
yeah, yeah.
say. He's done very well for himself. Richard Shaw, who was the guitar player for Cradle of Filth. I taught Richard for many years,
Wow.
and
Yeah,
so I think Richard is potentially going to do some stuff. So, and there's been a couple of other guys. There's a friend of mine who played guitar for Meshuggah. So there's a buddy of mine who did some stuff with Meshuggah. He we've spoken to him about doing some things with us. So we got some other guitar players sort of on the radar, but the main thing at the moment is finishing my beginners course, which has taken like 2 years. It's
wow.
dragged on a bit, but the thing is during the pandemic, my partner lost a lot of her work because she's a tour manager,
Sure enough. Yeah, yeah.
and so I got an offer through Mesa Boogie and a friend of mine to do some video on the Gibson guitar app.
Okay.
So I've kind of become the face of their app, which
Mad.
never really intended to happen. So I've been doing a lot of the tuition on there. So I've kind
Great.
of that's slowed down a little bit, and I sort of, what it's like when you're a musician, it's feast or famine, and they were
Yeah.
throwing work and being, we have a kid, and
Uh huh.
I live in Stockholm, which isn't exactly the cheapest place in the world to
I
live.
can
So
imagine. Yeah.
having a gig working on the Gibson app was,
Handy.
the pandemic was really good for me.
Yeah.
I was one of those people that benefit, it was like, holy crap, but not saying obviously it was a shitty time, but it was,
Yeah.
certain people with their work flourished. And so, but yeah, we're sort of really pushing ahead now with, the whole Six String Alliance thing, and I've just hit the halfway point of editing. I've done this huge 10-week beginner course. It's from everything from this is a guitar, this is a volume pot,
Yeah.
this is how you change the string. I've gone real like all the way up to, there's stylistic backing tracks. I think the first week's backing track is in the style of the Foo Fighters, just taking an E chord shape
Yeah.
and moving it around with all the open strings and just
Yeah.
strumming it, and the backing track is doing all the work. So it's super inspiring. And so once that's completed, we're going to get that launched, and then hopefully I can make more of a transition over to just sort of making my daily work more of that. And
Yeah.
I've written an intermediate course, and I've got a lot of material that I've filmed that was for other things that the copyright has reverted back to me, that I can now shoot lessons with and put other content, bonus content in there. And I think we're talking about doing weekly live streams and stuff like that. So, you know,
Yeah.
I just let, Warren is a very clever man,
Yeah.
and
Knows the crack.
I'm not, I'm the stupid artistic one. So I just let him go, we're going to do this. And I go, all right, I'll get
Yeah,
it done.
grand.
And, yeah.
Fair enough. Fair
So
enough.
that's,
I
that's
wish.
where, that's where we're at with that right now.
Excellent. That's amazing. You're going to be transitioning into the world of online courses and stuff. I love that. I absolutely love that. It's good what you're saying about letting the back and track do the work. I'm a huge believer in that. When I teach kids, like the very first lesson, I'll make sure that they're getting playing to a
Yeah,
back and track, because I always say if you can play along to it and it sounds like it's inspiration from day one, and
exactly.
the track will do the work for you. So
Yeah.
it's good to have that sort of view validated by someone like yourself.
I think it's good because, we, I remember doing a thing with Dave from Rogers Band. We got hired by Gibson actually back in 2003
Right.
to go up to the Reading Festival.
Uh-huh.
This was a weird gig. 3 days, me and Dave taught guitar in these big inflatable tents for O2. So you'd have people at a festival absolutely off their tits coming in, picking up guitars, going, wow, and you've got to teach like a room full of people how to play the guitar. So what we did was take an E chord and move it around the neck. And we
Yeah.
were sitting strumming, and then one of us would start playing, and we're just going, now you change. And we had like sort of 50 or 60 people at one time. And it was actually really inspiring and it worked really well. So I kind of took that concept for the first lesson. I thought, well, if I make a backing track that has that kind of American sort of rock, the
Yeah,
Foo
yeah, yeah.
Fighters, Tom Petty, that sort of sound with all the open strings and just move the shape around. And yeah, if someone can pick up a guitar and go, all right, well, I can hold that chord, I can move it here and strum. I only strum once. It's gonna hopefully fuel
Yeah,
their love of, oh man, that sounds cool. I
yeah.
want to do some more. So
Amazing. Yeah. I love it. I'm gonna borrow that myself and see if I can work it into my lessons.
yes, I think
Excellent
it's I
stuff.
think it's a cool thing.
It's a great thing. It's a fantastic thing. Anything that can get someone making the noise that they hear in their head, or at least some
Mm.
sort of version of that faster, is always a really, really good thing. So let's start wrapping up here now. And before we head into a quick fire round, Jamie, out of all of the things that we have spoken about and over the past hour or so, if anybody out there is listening and wants to get into a career in music, now obviously we've touched on so many different points. We've touched on absolutely everything there is to do with having a career as a guitarist. But if someone nowadays, and I know you've also said that it's quite different nowadays, but if you had to still give advice to someone, so say Harry out there who wants to be the next Brian May, what advice would you give to Harry to make it
So
big as a musician,
I,
make
I,
a career of it?
I kind of knew that you were going to ask me this question.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Okay. Let's spring
I'll tell
let's
you
move
why. I'll tell
on.
you why. Because the information, I think, of how I did it is not relevant anymore.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Because I came from a hanging out at gigs, giving people tapes. I auditioned. This is crazy. I remembered this the other day. I completely forgot about it. I was successful in auditioning. I was very pretty when I was young, with very long hair. And when I was in my early 20s, I was selected to be in a early version of Big Brother, which was not called Big Brother. It was basically a Channel 4 thing where they took four individuals, put them in a house and formed a band. And I got the job as the guitar player, which was weird. I'm kind of thankful now that it didn't happen. It was a girlfriend at the time said, you should send off for that. And I sent all this stuff in and they phoned me up and were like, yes, we
Uh-huh.
want you to do it. And I think that had I done that, maybe people would now be like, you were that bell end in that program. I think it would have potentially, but the
Yeah.
program got shelved before it started. It was,
Yeah.
but this
Thankfully.
was, yeah, thank Christ. This was in like 95. This
Yeah.
happened, 94. But I think that, like I said, I was always hustling guitar tapes and writing to people. And, trying to get on a TV show or trying to get into a gig or you know. And I made a lot of contacts with people through doing guitar magazines.
Yeah.
I interviewed Richie Kotzen in 1999, and he ended up playing guitar on my first album at my house. We became such good friends, but
Class.
now it's so based on, I don't know what
Yeah.
it is. I don't know what it is anymore. I think the only advice I would give to young Harry is to just do what you believe is right for you. Don't do what everyone else is doing, because that was another thing that I was sort of as you can see, I like to have conversation, and when conversation, you get on with someone, and conversation's flowing, you
Yeah.
start to loosen up. I can be mildly humorous, and at some of the YouTube events I've been to, some of the guys are like, "Man, you're one of the funniest people I've ever met. You
There you
should
go.
be doing this on your YouTube channel." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't really want to do that, because that's for my friends and people,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, my channel is, I want to be taken, I guess, the person that if I kind of not aspire to, but look up to. Tom Quayle, who I've worked with at Lick Library, he's a good friend, and I don't really know this other guy, but we've spoken. Is Pete Thorne, and
Oh, I know him.
you
Yeah.
know, Pete's done things of a similar. Obviously he played with Chris Cornell and he's done stuff, but his
Yeah.
channel is very. And I always wanted my thing to be sensible.
Yeah.
Bits of my humor sneak out sometimes, but I don't want it to be, trying to be zany and a bit, I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want that. So maybe if I'd have been an idiot, I'd get more views. But I think being true to what you do, and I wouldn't just grab anything that comes along just because someone wants to throw something free at you.
Yeah.
I've seen some, and again, this is not a derogatory thing, but I've seen some people who started their channels and they've become successful, and then they're getting stuff thrown at, and then you see them in adverts
Yeah.
for weird bits of gear, and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? It'd
Yeah.
be like someone writing to me going, "Do you want to like advertise something completely?"
Yeah.
No, So I think being true to what you do, I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm not massive. Maybe you need to, you know,
Yeah.
take the corporate things in your hands, squeeze them. But it's never really been for me. I've always just done what I do. So
Very good.
that's what I tell anyone. Just be
Okay.
honest. Be honest.
As Gibson and Mark Agnesi would say, play original.
That's yeah. Just
Please,
do
Mark
you.
Agnesi or anyone at Gibson, if that's not a dig, that was more of a. It's
I
fucking.
have to be a little bit careful there, as I am on their
Aye.
app.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not a dig, lads. That's not a dig. That's yeah. You
But
you
no,
you you, you do.
I think do your thing, do your own thing, just do you, and I think that if you throw enough shit at the wall, sooner enough some of it will stick, and it's true. You
Love
know,
it.
if you are passionate about what you do,
Yeah.
and I can listen to something. I am not a very good guitar player. I would say that I find playing the guitar very hard,
All right.
and I don't think that I am a natural guitar player. I think that I am musically inclined,
Right.
because I can pick anything up and play it, and I do a lot of all the tracks that you hear on my channel. I do everything, and there's a lot of other stuff we've not spoken about with artists that I've done stuff for and things,
Yeah.
but I don't, I watch. I guess spending so many years around Guthrie makes you realise that's a guitar player, and I see some of these guys online, and some of them I'm like, holy shit, look at that kid. But then
Yeah.
you're like, well, what is that?
Yeah.
Is that music? It's amazing, but I played to 7,500 people on Saturday night in a sold out arena. I
Yeah.
didn't do any of that shit.
Yeah.
I got paid. There was a very satisfied audience,
Yeah.
and I was playing guitar,
Sure, where are you
and
going
I had
wrong?
a great time. And so I think that it's I don't understand sometimes. It makes me sound, I do understand, but I just don't get it. I'm like, man, what's this? I tell you, it's this whole kind of thing that guy from that funny band, Polyphia. And at first,
I knew that's who we were getting at. Tim Henson.
when I first heard Polyphia, I was like, this is pretty cool. And after a while, it got a little bit kind of bubblegum for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather listen to who's some of the what's the band that I really like? God, Tesseract. I like prog and
Oh,
that.
okay.
I love that kind of stuff. But the Polyphia thing was a little bit. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't sound like it's played to me.
It's almost like 10 years ago it was Dragon Force. Remember Dragon Force?
Yeah.
And Through the Fire and the Flames was on Guitar Hero. That's like this. That's like I'm sort of relating them back and forth on the very very kind of unrelated topic of almost Polyphia. Tim Henson's new Ibanez acoustic nylon string guitar is next on my hit list because I think it's the coolest thing in the world. I have a million Ibanez guitars. Ibanez is my thing. Music Man's yours. Ibanez is my thing.
I will show you something.
Oh, I'm buzzing to see this.
It's an original
Oh,
1991
Red Beach.
Red Beach Koa mahogany. That's one of the limited ones that you had to order.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah.
That is, I don't have anything near as I've got a Paul Stanley Iceman.
That's pretty cool. My daughter would love it.
See,
I'm a rock dad. I took my daughter to see Kiss when she was 5. We were on the guest list. But anyway, I'm not disrespecting Tim Henson at all. But anything that gets people into guitar is great. It's just
absolutely.
I'm just. But there was that whole Boomer Benz thing, and I know what's his name, Steve Stevens quite well, and Steve Stevens became quite. But the whole Boomer Benz, he wrote this whole thing about it, and the thing is no matter how much you can, when I listen to that stuff, sometimes it just is that's way too clean for what you're doing. There's no handling noise. That doesn't sound right to me. And then when I watched Tim Henson jamming with Steve Vai, it was a bit like, ooh, that doesn't sound like you. My videos sound like me because if someone said to me, if I could play you the raw files and you can hear all the swearing when I'm trying to play it because I don't find it easy. But what you see is what you get. That's how I play, and it's played live. But I'm not suggesting that Tim Henson mimes or anything before I get loads of people, and great. He's great. Oh, it was awesome. It's great. Lovely. But then you just saw that, what's his name? Mick Jagger and Keith Richards looking to team up with Ringo Starr. And
I saw that yesterday.
Paul McCartney. You ain't ever going to compete with that level of rock and roll.
Never. I literally I saw that yesterday and I was like, that is literally that's like rock completed.
That is when he made his comment about Boomer Benz. Yep, all day long, fella, because that is gonna tick everyone's box.
100%.
That is from guys who started playing in the dingiest little clubs. And that's what I mean. I think now that anyone can buy a camera, they can buy a piece of software. That's the other thing. Like when I watch all the reviews of the gear, I like modeling. I worked for Line 6 in the early.
Silver.
Yeah, I got a posh one. I worked for Line 6 in like 2000, 2001. I've been an endorsee of Line 6. I've got in my rack, I've got a Helix, but I integrate with amps. And I loved watching. I used to read the loadout in the back of Guitar for the Practicing Musician, where you'd see all this stuff. And like one of my favorite guitar players, Ty Tabor, he had like part of an Elite Strat, the preamp of the Elite Strat, ripped out and made into some little, dog shit and bus tickets rack unit. It was all kind of held together. That was part of his gear. Oh yeah, I've got that bit, and I stick that in there, and you'd see these people like Eddie Van Halen would, building stuff to make it. And there you go. Oh, what do you use? Oh, I'm using a Quad Cortex, and I'm using. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It just I can't.
Yeah, I know. I completely get it. It's I 100% understand what you're saying. Everything is too. One of my favorite albums is Aerosmith live bootleg because there is it Train Kept Rolling? I think it's Train Kept Rolling, that track on it. And Joe Perry makes no, sorry, yeah, that one and Dream On. And Joe Perry makes so many mistakes on the guitar, and you can hear absolutely every single. You can nearly hear how drunk he is or how kind
Yeah,
of do you know what I mean? And and no disrespect, that sounds horrendous, but do you know what I mean? I love that.
it's
I
real.
absolutely, it's real, exactly. I love it so much. I don't get on with plugins. I've got my amp is one of the original 5150 combos, one of the Mark One, and
Yeah,
it's heavy as that, and it's the biggest fucking thing that there's ever been. And I just plug into that, and it's an amp. It's there. It's in the room. It's
I, I
not.
I love technology. I've worked, like I said, with IK Multimedia, and I
Yeah.
think anything that gets people playing is great. But I think when it comes to the whole sort of, that you said, well, we've gone on a tangent. I don't know how we've got here, but
Oh,
what
we're
would
here
you
now.
give advice for people?
Yeah.
I just look at it now, and I think that there's no mystery anymore. The
No, I
internet
know.
has been great for things because it enables people to do things like this, or you can put a video up and one of your heroes will go, "That's fucking awesome, man," and you go, "Oh my
Yeah.
god!" But it's the music scene seems to be now people playing cover versions of songs. I never know if some of them are playing, and it's all about getting ticks and clicks and
Yeah,
thumbs
of
up,
course.
and when I was playing, it was not that. So
Yeah, I know what you
yeah,
mean. Yeah. Cool. Listen, we've talked on here for hours. Well, not hours, but for ages, and I've loved every second of it. Let's finish off with a couple of quick fire questions. So, Jamie, these are just some quick fire questions. Whatever comes to mind first. They've nothing to do with music, just a bit of crack. So, question one, and these are brand new. I've never used these with anybody else. These are would you rather questions. So,
okay.
would you rather have the ability to fly or be invisible?
I'd rather be invisible on certain videos or gigs with the embarrassment of. I think flying would be cool.
It'd be handy, all right, for getting your guitars everywhere
It would be
and
pretty
gigs.
cool for to going home to see my mum. I wouldn't
Ah,
have to keep booking tickets. I could just I'm popping over to see mum.
away you go. Cool.
Off you go.
Love it.
Yeah.
Would you rather be able to speak every language? Oh, I didn't even realize this was a musical question. Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be a master of every musical instrument?
Uh well, being English, we're just the laziest fuckers that there is when it comes to languages. I live in Sweden, and my daughter speaks both, and she's like, "Dad, it's so embarrassing when you." So I think I'd probably just go with the fact that I'm an ignorant English person who expects everybody to speak my language, and that's just how we are, isn't it? Don't you speak English? What's
Ah,
wrong with you? So I think I think I might go with the language one
oh,
actually,
the
just so I
language
can
one.
break the mold
Yeah, I
and
love it.
not be perceived as one of those ignorant English people abroad.
Well, for what it's worth, I used to live in Spain playing in Irish pubs in Salou, and I might as well have been living in Edenderry in the sun because the most I can say in Spanish is, "Can I have another beer, please?"
Mate,
I'm
I can
sorry.
all I can just about order some chicken, some ham, and some cheese in Sweden, and I've lived here 8 years. It's
Wow.
pitiful.
It's
It's
not great.
pitiful.
It's
No,
not great. But hey ho, there you go. You now have the ability to speak every language in the world, so you're sucking diesel. Um,
excellent.
would you rather live in a world where it never stops raining or where it never stops snowing?
Oh well, I live in a country where it never stops snowing,
Well,
so
I
that
did think that was quite apt.
yeah, I don't know, but I do kind of prefer snow to rain.
Okay, cool. So never stop snowing.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be a bit more Star Wars as well.
Ah, yes. I loved we talked so much about Star Wars in it. I also loved, I never touched on that point, that Brian May plays a Nintendo on Lego Star Wars on Nintendo. That's like the best thing in the world.
Brian May has a Star Wars room in his house.
Of course he does. Of course he does. The old astrologer in him. Do you know what
I've
I
got a
mean?
photo. I've got a photograph. I don't know where it is. Is it on my iPad? I've got a
Wow, here we go now.
photograph of. I don't know whether I'll be able to find this man. So this might be the biggest anticlimax ever. if I scroll down on my Instagram, I don't know how long ago I shared this picture, but bear with me.
Yeah.
I know it's here. I do know it's here. Why is my Instagram taking? So there's loads of just pictures of my gear.
Uh-huh. Aye, because you just found those 50 odd guitars that you were missing for a couple of years, didn't you?
Yeah. I did find a load of guitars recently. Where is it? I hope I can find this.
I'm scrolling as well for what it's worth to see if I can find it for you.
There's a picture of me and Brian.
Well, there's you and Brian anyway back in the day.
There's a picture of me and Brian in his house. I found it.
You found it?
Yeah, this is what happens when you go around Brian May's house and you go lightsaber fighting with him.
Ah, Jesus Christ. That is mad.
Yeah, he had a router that was Darth Vader's head.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Of course he did. Ah, right. We're going to do one more question and then that's it. Would you rather have the ability to teleport anywhere or to time travel? Again, teleportation would be right handy for you, but
I think time travel would be pretty cool.
yeah, you can already fly, so teleportation is just kind of, do you know what I mean? You're just getting greedy at that stage.
Exactly. I kind of like to go back and see some dinosaur shit, and
Dinosaurs
I'd like to maybe go back just before Jimi Hendrix
Eh.
and turn up to a club in London with your gear
and play all Jimi Hendrix's stuff and steal it off.
Exactly.
Steal it off before he's ever even thought of it, and then pour out Jimmy.
Yeah, be known as the bald pre-Jimi Hendrix,
I love it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Jamie, before I let you go, where can people find you if they're looking for you in the world?
The pub.
Good man.
Just on the Six String Alliance thing, I guess. On I can't remember what it's called, YouTube. On Facebook as well.
All those places, great stuff. It'll all be linked in the description. Jamie, it's been an absolute roller coaster talking today. Thanks so much for being involved.
Thank you for inviting me.